Hello everyone. Today we have an incredible story that will make you think. Imagine this. A daughter finds out her father might be cheating on her mother. What should she do? Reveal the truth or preserve the family? In this story, we'll see how one decision can destroy everything. Stay with us to find out what happened to our heroine. And now, let's dive into this drama. My mother cried almost every evening. Her suspicions grew like a snowball, poisoning all family conversations. Every time she told me she had seen her, that young woman who showed up at my father's cafe almost every day, I saw sparks of jealousy and pain flash in her eyes. "Emily," she began once again, gripping a mug of tea in her hands, "you don't understand how painful this is. I can't live like this anymore. He denies everything, but I see how they laugh, how she reaches for him. It breaks my heart." I sat across from her, trying to hide my own irritation. This had been going on for months. Father swore there was nothing, that Catherine was just a client, and Mother was only making things worse. But what could I do? "Mom, if you're so worried, why don't you just talk to him? Find out the truth, but not like this, with tears," I said, knowing my words were useless. She looked up at me, her eyes full of tears. "I don't know how to talk to him anymore, Emily. He just brushes me off. He says I'm imagining things. But I feel she means something to him." I stayed silent. I felt it too, but I couldn't admit it to her, or even to myself. Every time Father mentioned Catherine, there was something special in his voice, something foreign. And although he had never given me any reason to doubt his loyalty, I couldn't shake the doubts now. Mother asked for help, but what kind? What could I offer? An idea flashed in my mind, and before I realized what I was saying, I suggested, "Mom, why don't you just check his phone?" Her eyes widened in surprise. "How? I don't have the password." "I do," I replied, realizing that this step could be the beginning of the end. Mother froze. In that moment, it felt like everything around us stopped. She didn't say a word, but I knew the decision had already been made. I took on the responsibility that couldn't be handed back. Mom stared at me for a long time, as if she couldn't believe I had suggested it. I was surprised by my own words too, but it was too late. They had already escaped my lips, and there was no going back. Her face twisted with inner turmoil. On one hand, she wanted to know the truth, but on the other, she was afraid it would be devastating. "Are you sure, Emily?" Her voice trembled. Maybe I'm just giving in to these thoughts for nothing. I could have stopped her. I could have said it was a bad idea, that it was better to leave everything as it was. But something inside me said, it has to be done. And it wasn't just for her, but for me too. I was tired of being the mediator in their endless fights and silent accusations. I needed to know what was really going on. "Mom, if you truly want to understand what's happening, this is the only way," I said firmly, though I wasn't fully sure of my words myself. "You have the right to know the truth." She nodded slowly, and although her hands trembled, there was something new in her eyes, determination. I handed her the phone and quietly gave her the password. At that moment, I felt the ground slipping from beneath me. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe I had just signed our family's death sentence. Mom entered the code and stared at the screen for a few seconds, as if hoping something would stop her. But nothing did. She opened the messages. The silence in the room became unbearable. Time seemed to stop, and I couldn't take my eyes off her face. Mom read and changed right before my eyes. First, confusion appeared in her gaze, then pain, and finally, something broke. She closed her eyes as if she couldn't believe what she saw. "What is it?" My voice was hoarse. She opened her mouth, but couldn't say a word. I came closer, looking over her shoulder. It was an endless string of messages, short but full of meaning. "You're beautiful. I can't wait to see you. You mean so much to me." All of them were addressed to Catherine. He lied," Mom whispered. Her hands gripped the phone so tightly it seemed like it would break. "They've been seeing each other this whole time. Behind my back. Father always said there was nothing between them. But here on the screen was proof that they had been spending time together, meeting when he claimed he was going to watch football or walk the dog." I felt a cold wave rising inside me. Had I just destroyed everything? "Emily." Mom's voice trembled, and she looked at me with desperation. "What do I do now?" I didn't know what to say. Mom continued to hold the phone in her hands, unable to let go of it. Her fingers nervously clenched the device, and it seemed like she still couldn't believe what she had seen. I stood next to her, feeling like a detached observer, sensing how the whole world was slowly crumbling around us. We were both trapped by the truth we had just unleashed. He told me he was going to watch football, that he just wanted to relax, Mom said, as if in a trance. And her voice broke, I just can't accept this. Inside me, something inexplicable was happening too. It was a strange feeling. On one hand, relief that the secret was out, on the other, sharp pain from the understanding that everything had now changed. There was no going back. The family I knew was disappearing before my eyes. Maybe it's just friendship. I tried to soften the blow a little. Maybe they're really just talking? Nothing's been proven, right? But even I didn't believe my own words. Everything I saw in those messages pointed to the contrary. This was something more than just friendship. Too many meetings, too many warm words, too many lies. Mom suddenly stood up, and I saw how her face changed from pain to anger. She threw the phone onto the table as if it had burned her hands. Friendship. Her voice was full of despair. Friendship doesn't require lies. Why couldn't he just tell me who he's meeting? Why did he lie if it was innocent? I was silent. There was no point in arguing with what was obvious. Father had lied, and that lie had destroyed everything. I need to talk to him, Mom finally said, her hands trembling, her eyes filled with tears. I can't endure this pain anymore. I deserve the truth. I felt a lump in my throat. Even though I had been the one to push Mom to this, now I was afraid of what would happen next. How would she talk to him? How would this all end? Mom, maybe you should wait? I began cautiously. You're too upset right now. Give yourself time to cool off. But she wasn't listening to me anymore. Her resolve was unshakable. No. I need to do this now, while I have the strength, she said, heading for the door. I can't live in this nightmare any longer. I was left alone in the room, unsure of what to do next. Thousands of thoughts raced through my mind, about what would happen to our family, what Father would say, and most importantly, how I had allowed things to reach this point. Was I to blame for what had happened? Or was this an inevitable outcome? Mom left, and I was left alone with my thoughts. A few minutes later, the silence was broken by the sound of a message on my phone. It was my sister Sarah. Emily, she wrote. Did you really give Mom the password to Dad's phone? Dad's furious. I felt my heart tighten. Sarah had always been on Father's side. And if she knew, then soon the whole family would find out. What have I done? I thought, staring at the screen of my phone. Hours passed, which felt like an eternity, before Mom returned home. Her face was pale, her eyes red, and her hands shaking. She closed the door behind her and walked past me without a word, as if she didn't notice my presence. I didn't dare ask how the conversation with Father had gone. Her appearance spoke for itself. Mom. I began timidly, but she just raised her hand, signaling me to be quiet. She stopped in the middle of the room and closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering her strength, then sat down on the couch, staring at a single point ahead. Her voice was quiet, but it was filled with exhaustion and pain. I talked to him, she finally said. I told him everything. That I knew, that I had read the messages. I felt everything inside me tighten. Father, what did he say? Did he apologize? Did he admit his guilt? I wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but couldn't find the words. He didn't deny that he had been texting her, Mom continued. He said there was nothing between them, that it was just friendship. But I can't believe that anymore. She looked at me, and in her eyes, I saw a pain that pierced to the core. Emily, you knew from the beginning, didn't you? You knew I was right. I lowered my gaze, feeling the weight of her accusation fall on my shoulders. I didn't know. I had hoped Mom was wrong, that Father wasn't capable of cheating. But now I wasn't sure of anything. Sarah says I ruined the family, I said, without lifting my eyes. She thinks I betrayed Father, that it's all my fault. Mom didn't reply right away. She looked at me for a long time, as if searching for the right words. You did the right thing, she finally said, her voice trembling, but there was firmness in it. It's not you who destroyed the family. It's him. He lied to me, lied to all of us. And now we have to live with the consequences of his lies. But her words didn't bring me any comfort. I knew what would follow, a scandal, a breakup, and possibly a divorce. And all because I had given Mom the code to his phone. Deep down, I realized that these events could have happened without my involvement, but the guilt still washed over me like a wave. That evening, as Mom and I sat in silence, my phone buzzed again. It was Sarah. This time, she wasn't texting, she was calling. I felt my heart skip a beat. What was she going to say? I answered the call and heard her cold voice. "Emily, how could you?" she began without a greeting. "You've ruined everything. Now Dad blames you for everything. Do you even understand what you've done?" As Sarah, I didn't. I began, but she cut me off. "You betrayed him, you betrayed all of us. You only thought about Mom, but have you even once thought about how Dad feels now? Did you?" I froze. Sarah had always been closer to Father, and I knew her words would be like this. But that didn't make them any less painful. I tried to say something, to explain, to justify myself, but she wasn't listening anymore. "If you thought this would help, you were wrong. Now none of us will ever be the same." She hung up, leaving me in silence. My hands trembled, and I felt tears welling up in my eyes. Everything was falling apart, and I didn't know how to stop it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Sarah's words echoed in my mind over and over, like a painful refrain. Was she right? Had I truly betrayed Father? With every passing hour, my doubts grew stronger. Mom sat in the other room, silent and broken, while Father was probably somewhere at his cafe, trying to forget among cups of coffee and customers, among whom perhaps was Catherine again. The next day, things only got worse. I woke up with a heavy sense of dread. Breakfast passed in tense silence, and every sound seemed deafening. Mom stayed quiet, as if she had withdrawn into herself, and I didn't know what to say. The conversation with her yesterday seemed like just the beginning of the crack that was growing in our family. It felt like that crack would soon tear us all apart. At some point, I couldn't stand it anymore. "Mom, what do you think will happen next?" I asked, hoping for some clarity. Her eyes slowly lifted from her teacup, and in them, I saw a weariness I had never seen before. "I don't know, Emily," she said quietly. "It feels like things will never be the same again." Her words were simple, but they sent a chill down my spine. I understood what she meant. The family I knew was falling apart, and no one could stop it. What about Dad? I tried to speak calmly, though inside, I was shaking with fear. Did he say anything? Mom sighed heavily. "He's gone, to his mother's for a few days. He said he needed time to think." My heart sank at those words. Father had always seen us as his fortress, his family, but now he had left. Not just physically, but emotionally too. I felt like we were losing him more and more with each passing day. "And what about your wedding?" Mom suddenly asked, and her question caught me off guard. I hadn't even thought about it. I was supposed to get married in a week. It was supposed to be the happiest event of my life. But how could I be happy when the family around me was falling apart? How could I stand before the altar when everything inside me screamed in pain? I don't know," I muttered, unable to find an answer. "It's all too much." Mom nodded slowly, as if understanding me better than I understood myself. "You need to think about it, Emily. You're about to start a new life, but in your old life, everything is falling apart. That's not a foundation to build something new on." Her words were harsh but true. I felt my heart tighten with contradictions. On one hand, I loved my fiancé, but on the other, how could I be happy when there was so much pain around me? How could I rejoice when my parents were losing each other? That evening, I received a message from Father. It was short and cold, as if written by a stranger. "Emily, we need to talk. Tomorrow at the cafe. Come alone." I stared at the screen, unable to believe it had come to this. Father had always been my rock, my hero. But now he sounded like someone I didn't know. The next morning, I walked to Father's cafe with a heavy heart, as if carrying the weight of our broken family on my shoulders. I was scared. I didn't know what he was going to say, but I felt this conversation would change everything. People hurried by, going about their business as if nothing in the world had changed, but my world was falling apart at the seams. I stopped in front of the cafe door, stared at its glass surface for a few seconds, then took a deep breath and entered. Father sat at a table in the corner, habitually hunched over his phone. I noticed how he quickly lifted his head when he saw me, and immediately hid his phone in his pocket. We exchanged a brief glance, but the warmth, the familiar spark in his eyes was gone. Instead, they were filled with exhaustion and some hidden pain. I sat across from him, trying to stay calm, though everything inside me was shaking. We sat in silence for a few seconds. The quiet between us hung like an invisible wall, difficult to overcome. "Emily," he finally began, his voice hoarse and tense, "I've been thinking a lot about what happened." I stayed silent, waiting for him to continue. Father sighed and looked away, avoiding my gaze. "I understand you wanted to help your mother. But honestly, you've let me down." Those words hit like a knife to the heart. I felt a lump in my throat, but I tried to hold it back. "Dad, I didn't mean to." I began, but he raised his hand, cutting me off. "I know you didn't mean to," he said, still looking away. "But you have to understand that this can't be undone. Mom doesn't trust me anymore, and you destroyed the last bit of trust we had left." I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. How could he blame me for all this? Was it my fault that he had lied to Mom? That he had allowed this Catherine to become such an important part of his life? "But Dad," my voice trembled, "you created this situation. You lied to Mom. I didn't do anything wrong." He looked at me, his expression full of bitterness. "Emily, I love your mother. But things between us haven't been the same for a long time. And it's not your place to interfere in our relationship. Yes, I lied, but you shouldn't have given her that password. You destroyed everything." My heart ached with pain. He was blaming me for trying to save their marriage. How could he think this was my fault? I felt tears welling up in my eyes, but I held them back with all my strength. "And what now?" I whispered, barely holding back the tears. "What's going to happen to us?" Father sighed heavily, his shoulders slumped. "I don't know," he said quietly. "Maybe your mother and I need time. Maybe this can still be fixed. But right now, everything is too complicated." He looked at me, and in his eyes, I saw something I had never seen before: alienation. This was not the person I had known, not my father. He had changed, and this rift was now too deep to be mended. "And what about the wedding?" I suddenly asked, realizing this question was the last thread connecting me to reality. "Are you going to come?" Father hesitated, his eyes darkened. "Emily." He looked at me with sadness. "I think it's better if I don't come." Those words hit me harder than anything else. I couldn't hold back any longer. Tears streamed down my cheeks, and I turned away so he wouldn't see. The father I had always considered my rock wasn't coming to my wedding. He had chosen not me, but his lies, his excuses, his doubts. I stood up from the table, feeling my heart shatter into pieces. He stood up too, trying to say something, but I couldn't listen anymore. All I wanted was to leave, to run away from this pain, from these accusations. "Emily," he began, but I was already heading for the door, not looking back. At that moment, I knew one thing: the family I had known my whole life no longer existed. I left the cafe, realizing that a new chapter in my life was beginning, but it would be without those who had once meant the most to me. Thank you for listening to the end. If this story touched you, be sure to share your thoughts in the comments. Your opinion is very important to me as the author of this story. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new stories that will make you think and dive into a world of drama and emotions. Until next time.